The first step, from survival to stability. Every financial journey begins with a number. For some people, it's a healthy bank balance that gives them confidence. For others, it's a number they hope no one else ever sees. Maybe it's just enough to cover this month's bills. Maybe it's less. Maybe it's a reminder that one unexpected expense could throw everything into chaos. If you've ever checked your banking app more than once in the same day, hoping somehow the balance had magically changed, you're not alone. Millions of people live that reality every single day. Not because they're lazy, not because they don't work hard, but because earning money and building wealth are two very different skills. Most of us are taught how to earn. Very few of us are taught how to keep, grow, and multiply what we earn. And that misunderstanding quietly shapes the first decade of many people's financial lives. Imagine waking up every morning already thinking about money. Not because you're excited about investing, because you're calculating. Can rent wait another few days? Should you fill the gas tank completely or just enough to get through the week? Can groceries stay under budget if you skip a few items? These decisions may seem small, but making them every day slowly changes the way you think. Financial pressure rarely announces itself with dramatic moments. Most of the time, it arrives quietly. It hides in hesitation. It hides in canceled plans. It hides in the uncomfortable feeling of checking prices before buying even the simplest things. Eventually, survival becomes a habit. And when survival becomes normal, dreaming about the future starts feeling unrealistic. Here's something most people never realize. Money problems are rarely just financial. They're psychological. When every paycheck already has a destination before it arrives, your brain stops thinking long term. It focuses only on today. This week's bills, next week's rent, the upcoming credit card payment. Your world becomes smaller. Not because your dreams disappeared, because stress pushes them further away. This is why so many people feel stuck, even when they're working harder than ever. They're running faster on a treadmill that's going nowhere. The effort is real. The progress isn't. One day, something changes. Not your income, not your job, your awareness. You decide to track every dollar you spend for an entire month. At first, it feels unnecessary. You already know where your money goes, or at least you think you do. Then the numbers begin adding up. Coffee on the way to work, food deliveries, unused subscriptions, impulse purchases, convenience fees. Little expenses that never felt important by themselves, but together, they tell a completely different story. The problem wasn't one expensive mistake. It was hundreds of invisible decisions. That realization doesn't make you feel guilty. It makes you feel powerful. Because problems you can measure are problems you can solve. For the first time, you stop wondering where your money disappeared. Instead, you begin giving every dollar a purpose before you spend it. Rent, groceries, utilities, savings, investments, entertainment. Every dollar now has a job. It sounds simple, because it is. Yet this one habit quietly separates people who control money from people controlled by it. Money loves direction. Without it, it disappears. With it, it begins creating opportunities. Nothing dramatic happens during the first few months. There are no viral success stories, no lottery tickets, no overnight transformation. You still make mistakes. You still buy things you later regret. Unexpected expenses still appear. Life doesn't suddenly become easier, but something important has started changing. You're making decisions instead of reacting to them. That's a completely different way to live. Then, one afternoon, your car needs repairs. A year ago, this would have created panic. Today, it's still frustrating, but it's no longer a disaster, because you've quietly built your first emergency fund. It's not huge. Maybe $500, maybe $1,000. To someone wealthy, that amount seems insignificant. To you, it feels like breathing fresh air after holding your breath for years. The money isn't exciting because of what it can buy. It's exciting because of what it prevents. Fear, stress, desperation. Those invisible costs are often more expensive than the repair itself. As your emergency fund grows, you notice another change. You're sleeping better. Not because life is perfect, because uncertainty doesn't feel as dangerous anymore. Financial security isn't measured only by the numbers in your account. It's measured by the amount of peace those numbers create. That peace becomes addictive. You begin protecting it. Instead of spending every extra dollar, you save part of it automatically. At first, the habit feels difficult. Eventually, it feels normal. That's how every lasting financial habit is built. Not through motivation, through repetition. Around this time, you start looking honestly at your debt. Ignoring it no longer feels acceptable. Every month, interest quietly takes a piece of the money you've worked so hard to earn. It isn't obvious. It isn't dramatic, but it's relentless. So you make a decision. One balance at a time. One payment at a time. No shortcuts, no miracle solutions. Just consistency. The first account reaches zero. You stare at the confirmation screen longer than you expected. To someone else, it's just another payment. To you, it's proof. Proof that
progress is possible. Proof that discipline works. Proof that your future doesn't have to look exactly like your past. Momentum begins replacing motivation. This is one of the greatest financial lessons you'll ever learn. Motivation is emotional. Momentum is mathematical. Every good decision makes the next one slightly easier. Every small victory creates confidence. Confidence creates action. Action creates results. Results create belief. And belief keeps you moving long after motivation disappears. That's how ordinary people achieve extraordinary outcomes. Not through endless inspiration, through consistent execution. One evening, while reading about personal finance, you come across an idea you've never seriously considered. Investing. For years, you believed investing was something wealthy people did, something complicated, something risky, something for later. Now you realize something surprising. Later never arrives. The best time to learn was years ago. The second best time is today. So you begin. Slowly. You read books, listen to interviews, study basic investing principles. You discover that successful investing isn't about predicting tomorrow. It's about preparing for the next 20 years. That completely changes your perspective. You open your first investment account. Then you hesitate. The money sitting in your savings account feels safe. Investing feels uncertain. Eventually, you transfer a small amount. Not enough to change your life, just enough to begin. The market moves up, then down. Your emotions want to react. Instead, you keep learning. You discover that every major investor has experienced downturns. Temporary losses don't automatically become permanent ones. Patience is often the highest paying financial skill anyone can develop. Months pass. Your savings continue growing. Your debt continues shrinking. Your investments quietly begin compounding. None of these changes seem life-changing on their own, but together, they're creating something much more valuable than money. Confidence. The person who once checked their bank account out of fear now checks it with curiosity. The person who once avoided financial conversations now enjoys learning about money. The person who once believed wealth belonged to other people has started believing something different. Maybe financial freedom isn't reserved for the lucky. Maybe it's built, one decision at a time. Then another realization arrives. Making more money is helpful, but it isn't enough. You know people earning twice your income who are still financially stressed. You know others earning less who sleep peacefully every night. The difference isn't always income, it's behavior. Income creates opportunity. Habits determine whether opportunity survives. Without discipline, every raise disappears. Without direction, every bonus fades. Without purpose,
every dollar eventually finds a way to leave. That's why wealth doesn't begin with a paycheck. It begins with a mindset. Looking back, you're surprised by what mattered most. It wasn't the first $1,000 you saved. It wasn't paying off a single debt. It wasn't opening an investment account. It was becoming someone who could consistently make better financial decisions. The numbers followed the identity, not the other way around. And that identity is quietly changing your future every single day. Because this is the truth almost nobody tells you. The first stage of wealth isn't about becoming rich. It's about becoming reliable. Reliable with your money. Reliable with your habits. Reliable with your promises to yourself. Everything that comes later is built on that foundation. And once that
foundation is strong enough, an entirely new challenge appears. Because saving money can create stability, but building real wealth requires something completely different. In the next chapter, you'll discover why even a great salary has limits, and how the journey truly accelerates when you stop working only for money and start building assets that work for you. Part 2. Breaking the paycheck cycle. For the first time in your life, you're no longer living in constant financial panic. Your emergency fund is growing. Some of your debt has disappeared. You understand where your money goes every month. Life feels more stable than it did before. But stability has a strange way of revealing a new question. You sit down one evening and calculate exactly how much money you earned over the past year. Then you ask yourself something you've never seriously considered before. What would happen if I couldn't work for 6 months? The answer arrives almost instantly. Your income would stop. The bills wouldn't. That realization stays with you. Not because you hate your job, because you finally noticed the invisible trade you've been making your entire adult life. Every paycheck has required one thing in return: your time. And time is the one resource you can never earn back. For years, you've believed that earning more money would solve everything. Get promoted, work overtime, negotiate a better salary, find a higher paying company. Those goals are worthwhile, but something doesn't add up. You know people making twice as much money as you who are still overwhelmed by debt. You also know people earning less who seem surprisingly calm. How is that possible? The answer isn't hidden in their income. It's hidden in their behavior. Money doesn't automatically create financial freedom. It magnifies habits that already exist. Someone who spends everything they earn at $40,000 often does the same thing at $120,000. Only the numbers become larger. Stress remains. Then you receive a raise. It's the largest increase you've ever earned. For a few days, you feel incredible. You imagine all the possibilities. You'll save more, invest more, pay off debt faster. Finally, you'll feel ahead. But within a few months, something unexpected happens. You move into a nicer apartment. You eat out more often. Your monthly subscriptions quietly multiply. Weekend shopping becomes a reward for working hard. Without realizing it, your lifestyle begins expanding to match your income. The extra money disappears, not because you wasted it, because your standard of living quietly adjusted itself upward. This is lifestyle inflation. It rarely feels irresponsible. It feels deserved. That's what makes it so dangerous. One evening, you compare your spending from 2 years ago with today. Your income has increased significantly. So have your expenses. The gap between earning more and actually keeping more has barely changed. That's when you make a decision. Every future raise will serve your future before it serves your lifestyle. Instead of spending every additional dollar, you'll divide it intentionally. Part goes toward investing. Part strengthens your emergency fund. Part improves your quality of life. For the first time, your income begins working according to your plan instead of your impulses. As your financial discipline grows, another realization appears. There are only so many hours you can sell. Whether you're paid hourly or receive a salary, your income still depends largely on your presence. You begin asking yourself a different question.
What if money could come from more than one place? At first, the idea feels unrealistic. Businesses belong to entrepreneurs.
Investments belong to wealthy people. Creating additional income sounds complicated. Then you remember something you've already learned. Every skill once seemed complicated before someone decided to learn it. So instead of dismissing the idea, you become curious. You start paying attention to people who have built multiple income streams. Not influencers showing expensive cars, real builders. People who quietly own small businesses, consultants, freelancers, software developers, writers, designers, investors, landlords. They all seem different on the surface, but they share one common principle. Their financial future doesn't depend entirely on one paycheck. That observation changes everything. Instead of asking, how can I earn more? You begin asking, how can I create value outside my primary job? The answer isn't obvious, so you experiment. You spend evenings learning skills that weren't part of your job description. Writing, graphic design, video editing, digital marketing, coding, public speaking, sales, negotiation. Not every skill interests you. Not every one becomes profitable, but every new ability increases your options. You slowly realize something schools rarely teach. Skills create income. Degrees create opportunities. The two are not always the same. The marketplace rewards people who solve valuable problems. Your goal shifts from finding a better job to becoming more valuable. Months later, someone offers you a small freelance project. The payment isn't impressive. Maybe it covers a week's groceries. But the amount isn't what excites you. It's the source. For the first time, money enters your bank account from somewhere other than your employer. That moment changes your thinking forever. One client becomes three. Three becomes six. Some months are busy. Others are quiet. The income isn't predictable. Neither is entrepreneurship. But something inside you has changed. You no longer see employment as your only path. You see it as one path among many. Of course, nothing grows perfectly. One client disappears without paying. A project you've spent weeks building fails completely. An online product launches to almost no interest. You question yourself. Maybe you're not cut out for this. Maybe the people succeeding online simply got lucky. Then you remember part one. Progress doesn't come from avoiding mistakes. It comes from learning faster than you quit. So instead of walking away, you improve. You ask for feedback. You study your competitors. You refine your work. Failure slowly transforms from embarrassment into education. Every mistake teaches something success never could. As the months pass, your side income becomes more consistent. It doesn't replace your salary, not even close. But it begins paying for individual parts of your life. First, your internet bill, then your groceries, eventually your rent. Each expense your side income covers reduces the pressure on your paycheck. You notice something remarkable. Financial freedom doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives one expense at a time. Another lesson quietly changes your perspective. You stop thinking only about income. You begin thinking about assets. What's the difference? Income requires continuous effort. Assets continue creating value long after the original work is finished. A rental property, a dividend-paying investment, a successful business, a digital product, a book, software, a course, even valuable content that earns revenue over time. Assets don't eliminate work. They multiply the value of work you've already done. That's a completely different way of thinking. One evening, you're exhausted after finishing your regular job and your side project. A friend asks why you're working so much. You pause before answering. Because from the outside, it looks like you're sacrificing your free time. From the inside, you're buying future freedom. There's a difference. You're no longer working only for today's paycheck. You're building tomorrow's choices. Every extra hour has a purpose. Not because hustle is glamorous, because temporary effort can create permanent advantages. As your confidence grows, you begin saying no more often. Not to opportunities, to distractions. Mindless spending, endless scrolling, activities that consume time without creating value. You finally understand that attention is a financial asset too. Where attention goes, progress follows. Protecting your focus becomes just as important as protecting your savings. Your financial spreadsheet begins looking different. There's still a salary, but now there's investment growth, a little freelance income, maybe a small business, perhaps dividend payments. The numbers aren't huge, but they represent something much larger: diversity. If one source slows down, another continues moving. You're no longer balancing your future on a single pillar. You're building several. That creates resilience, and resilience creates confidence. You also notice another psychological shift. You stop asking, "How much money do I have?" Instead, you ask, "How many systems are creating value for me?" That's the mindset of a builder. Builders don't rely on one engine. They create multiple engines. Some run faster than others, some require maintenance, some eventually stop working. But together, they create a stability that one paycheck never could. One ordinary afternoon, while reviewing your finances, you realize something almost unbelievable. Part of your monthly income arrived while you weren't working. A customer bought your product overnight. A client paid an invoice. Your investments generated returns. Nothing dramatic happened, yet money moved anyway. For years, your income stopped the moment you stopped working. Now it doesn't. The amount is still modest, but the principle is life-changing. You've crossed an invisible line. You're no longer earning only from labor. You're beginning to earn from ownership. And ownership changes the game forever. Looking back, you realize the biggest transformation wasn't financial, it was mental. You no longer see your career as your identity. You see it as one tool among many. You no longer depend entirely on someone else's decision to increase your income. You're creating opportunities yourself. That realization creates a level of confidence no paycheck can provide. Because true security isn't having one excellent source of income. It's knowing you have the skills to create another one whenever life demands it. And that confidence becomes the bridge between financial stability and genuine wealth. Because in the next chapter, you'll discover what happens when years of disciplined investing, business ownership, and multiple income streams begin to compound into something far more powerful than a salary could ever provide.
Reality. It changes everything. For the first time, you open your investment account and notice something unusual. Your portfolio has grown. Not because you deposited more money, because the businesses you invested in became more valuable. It isn't a massive gain. Maybe it's enough to pay a utility bill. Maybe enough for a weekend grocery trip. The amount doesn't matter. The lesson does. You've experienced the first real power of ownership. You didn't trade another hour for those dollars. Your capital created them. That's a feeling no paycheck can replicate. Of course, the market doesn't only move upward. A few weeks later, your investments decline. The balance drops faster than it grew. Years ago, this would have frightened you. Today, you react differently. You don't rush to sell. You don't obsess over every headline. Instead, you ask one simple question. Has the reason I invested actually changed? If the answer is no, then neither does your plan.
you finally understand that successful investing isn't about avoiding volatility. It's about surviving it. The people who build wealth aren't the ones who never experience downturns. They're the ones who refuse to let temporary fear destroy long-term discipline. Around the same time, your business begins entering a new phase. In the beginning, you did everything yourself. Customer service, marketing, sales, accounting, content, emails. Late nights became normal. Weekends disappeared. It felt productive. But eventually, you reached a limit. There were only so many hours in a day. Growth had stopped, not because demand disappeared, because you became the bottleneck. That realization was difficult. The business wasn't limited by the market. It was
Limited by you. So you make a decision that once felt impossible. You hire your first team member. At first, the expense feels uncomfortable. Writing that paycheck every month makes you nervous. Then something remarkable happens. The business improves. Not because someone replaced you, because someone freed you. Instead of spending hours answering routine emails, you're planning the next product. Instead of solving yesterday's problems, you're building tomorrow's opportunities. Delegation doesn't reduce your importance, it increases your impact. As the months pass, systems begin replacing effort. Customers receive better service. Processes become more organized. Mistakes happen less often. Revenue becomes more predictable. For the first time, your business doesn't depend on your constant presence. You can step away for a weekend, sometimes even a week, and everything continues moving. This is one of the greatest milestones in entrepreneurship. Not earning more, building something that can function without demanding every minute of your attention. Meanwhile, your investments continue quietly compounding. Some years are extraordinary, others are disappointing. You stop expecting perfection. Instead, you focus on consistency. You continue investing through uncertainty, through optimistic markets, through pessimistic ones, because you finally accepted something powerful. The market rewards patience far more often than prediction. Most people try to outsmart time. The truly successful simply allow time to work. Then one evening, while reviewing your financial spreadsheet, you notice something that would have seemed impossible a few years ago. The growth in your investments this year is greater than what you once earned in several months at your first job. You sit quietly for a moment, not because you're overwhelmed by the money, because you suddenly understand compounding. It always seemed slow, until one day it wasn't. Compounding behaves like a tree. For years, it appears to grow almost invisibly. Then suddenly the branches spread in every direction. People notice the tree. They never saw the years the roots spent growing underground. Wealth follows the same pattern. Your priorities begin changing. Years ago, you wanted more income. Now you want more ownership. Ownership of businesses. Ownership of investments. Ownership of intellectual property. Ownership of your schedule. Ownership creates options, and options create freedom. The more ownership you build, the fewer situations force you into decisions you don't want to make. That's real leverage. At this stage, saying no becomes surprisingly valuable. You no longer chase every opportunity. You evaluate them carefully. Will this move me closer to my long-term vision? Does this fit the life I'm trying to build? Or is it simply another distraction disguised as opportunity? Experience has taught you that every yes carries an invisible cost. Time, energy, attention, focus. Those resources are limited. You begin protecting them as carefully as you once protected your money. People start noticing your success. Some ask for advice. Others assume you were lucky. Very few understand the years that came before. They didn't see the evenings spent learning instead of relaxing. They didn't see the failed projects, the rejected ideas, the investments that didn't work, the moments when quitting felt easier than continuing. Success always appears faster from the outside, the invisible. Years remain invisible. Your definition of risk changes too. When you were younger, risk meant losing money. Now, you realize the greatest risk isn't always financial. Sometimes, the greatest risk is standing still, remaining comfortable, ignoring change, refusing to learn. Markets evolve, technology evolves, industries evolve. If you stop growing, the world eventually moves ahead without you. So, you continue investing, not only in assets, in yourself. You read constantly, you attend conferences, you learn from people whose experience exceeds your own. Knowledge becomes another form of compound interest. Every new skill increases the value of every future decision. Eventually, your financial life becomes less reactive and more intentional. You don't make purchases to celebrate success. You make investments to create future success. The excitement of buying things begins fading. The satisfaction of building something lasting grows stronger. You realize the most rewarding purchases aren't objects, they're opportunities. Opportunities to create, to solve problems, to help others, to build systems that continue creating value long after today's work is finished. Another surprising lesson emerges. Money doesn't eliminate problems, it changes them. Instead of worrying about paying bills, you think about capital allocation. Instead of worrying about income, you think about efficiency. Instead of asking how to earn more, you ask how to build smarter. The problems become more complex, but they're also more interesting. Growth never removes challenges, it simply upgrades them. Then comes another milestone. You calculate your net worth. Not because you're trying to impress anyone,
Because you want to measure progress. The number surprises you. Years earlier, reaching this level felt impossible. Now it's simply the result of thousands of ordinary decisions repeated consistently. You don't celebrate extravagantly. You smile, close the spreadsheet, and return to work. That's another sign you've changed. The process has become more satisfying than the milestone itself. Looking back, you realize something important. You never became wealthy because of one investment, or one business, or one lucky break. Every part of your financial life supported the others. Your job funded your first investments. Your investments created confidence. Your confidence encouraged entrepreneurship. Your business generated additional capital. That capital purchased more assets. The cycle repeated, again and again. Each success strengthened the next. This is the real power of compounding. Not just money. Skills compound, knowledge compounds, relationships compound, reputation compounds, confidence compounds. Every good decision quietly increases the value of the next one. You also discover that financial freedom has very little to do with luxury. Luxury is temporary. Freedom is permanent. Luxury is buying something expensive. Freedom is waking up without fear. Luxury is driving a beautiful car. Freedom is knowing you can choose how to spend your time. Luxury impresses strangers. Freedom changes your life. And if you had to choose only one, the answer has become obvious. The person who once worried about surviving the month now thinks in decades. Not because life suddenly became easy, because your perspective expanded. You've stopped chasing quick
Victories. You've started building permanent advantages. The game is no longer about making more money next month. It's about creating systems that continue producing value for years. That's when wealth stops feeling like a destination. It becomes a process, a living system, one that grows stronger with patience, discipline, and thoughtful decisions. And in the final chapter, you'll discover the greatest surprise of all, that after spending years chasing financial freedom, you eventually realize the most valuable thing wealth can buy was never money at all. It was time, purpose, and the opportunity to leave behind something that continues long after you're gone. The final return. What wealth was really buying all along. If someone had asked you years ago what financial success looked like, your answer would have been simple. A bigger house, a nicer car, a larger bank account. The freedom to buy almost anything without checking the price. At the beginning of the journey, those dreams made perfect sense. When you've spent years worrying about money,
It's natural to believe that having more of it will solve everything. And in many ways, it does. It removes stress. It creates security. It opens doors that once seemed permanently closed. But eventually, you discover something unexpected. Money solves financial problems. It doesn't automatically answer life's biggest questions. Those answers have to come from somewhere else. One morning, you wake up without an alarm. Not because you've retired, because you finally control your schedule. The projects on your calendar are there because you chose them, not because you desperately needed another paycheck. That feeling is difficult to describe. For years, your time belonged to obligations. Now your time belongs to intentions. And time you've
Learned is the one resource that never compounds backward. Every hour spent can never be earned again. That's why truly wealthy people protect their calendars more fiercely than their bank accounts. Money can be replaced. Time cannot. Looking back, you realize the biggest transformation wasn't financial. It was personal. You became more patient, more disciplined, more thoughtful, more resilient. The person who once reacted emotionally to every setback now responds with perspective. A market downturn no longer feels like disaster. A failed project no longer feels like failure. A difficult season no longer feels permanent. Experience has taught you something priceless. Every challenge eventually becomes part of the story that prepared you for the next opportunity. Growth was never about avoiding problems. It was about becoming capable of solving bigger ones. Your priorities have quietly changed. There was a time when success meant owning more. Now, success means needing less. Not because you've lost ambition, because you've discovered that simplicity creates clarity. You don't chase trends anymore. You don't buy things just because everyone else is buying them. You don't compare your life to strangers on social media. The race you once believed you were running no longer exists. You were competing with an illusion. The only comparison that matters now is between who you were yesterday and who you're becoming tomorrow. As your financial life grows stronger, another opportunity appears. The opportunity to help someone else begin. A young entrepreneur asks for advice. A friend wants guidance about investing. A family member wonders how to escape debt. Years ago, you would have shared tips. Now, you share perspective. Because strategies change, technology changes, markets change. But principles remain timeless. Spend less than you earn. Invest consistently. Build valuable skills. Protect your reputation. Stay curious. Think long-term. These ideas worked decades ago. They'll still work decades from now. You also begin understanding the true value of reputation. Money can buy attention. It cannot buy trust. Trust is earned one decision at a time, one promise kept, one honest conversation, one difficult choice made with integrity instead of convenience. Over the years, people begin recommending you before you've even entered the room. Not because you're the loudest, because you're reliable. Reputation quietly becomes one of your greatest assets. Unlike money, it opens doors that no amount of wealth can unlock alone. Then, one evening, while reviewing your financial statements, you notice something surprising. The numbers no longer create excitement. Years ago, every increase felt life-changing. Now they're simply information. Useful, important, but no longer emotional. That's because money has changed roles. It started as survival. Then it became security. Later, it became opportunity. Now it's become a tool, a resource that allows you to build, create, and contribute. Nothing more, nothing less. And strangely enough, that's when it becomes most powerful. You begin asking questions that never crossed your mind before. What kind of world will my children inherit? What problems deserve my attention? What can I create that lasts longer than I do? Those questions have nothing to do with luxury. They have everything to do with legacy. Legacy isn't about having your name remembered.
It's about leaving something valuable behind. A business that creates jobs, a scholarship that changes lives, a foundation that supports important work, a book, an idea, a lesson passed from one generation to the next. Real wealth doesn't end with the person who created it. It continues creating value long after they're gone. Eventually, someone asks you the question you've heard countless times. If you could start over with nothing, what would you do differently? You pause. Not
Because the answer is complicated. Because it's surprisingly simple. You would stop chasing shortcuts. You would spend less time trying to look successful. You would begin investing earlier. You would learn valuable skills before expensive possessions. You would protect your health with the same discipline you protected your finances. You would choose your friends more carefully. And above all, you would remember that wealth is built slowly enough to test your patience, but quickly enough to reward your consistency. You smile when you think about the person you used to be, the one who checked a bank account hoping the number had somehow changed, the one who believed financial freedom belonged only to lucky people, the one who thought one big opportunity would solve everything. That person wasn't wrong, just inexperienced. Experience eventually taught you what no classroom ever could. Small decisions matter. Consistency matters. Character matters. Time matters. And perhaps most importantly, the person you become while pursuing wealth is far more valuable than the wealth itself. Because here's the truth almost nobody tells you. Money amplifies. It doesn't transform. If you're generous before wealth, you'll likely become more generous afterward. If you're disciplined before success, you'll probably remain disciplined after success. If you're careless with a little, you'll often be careless with a lot. The habits you build long before financial freedom usually determine what you'll do once you achieve it. That's why personal growth and financial growth should always happen together. One without the other is incomplete. And now, after years of learning, building, failing, improving, investing, and growing, you finally understand what this entire journey was really about. It was never about becoming richer than someone else. It was never about collecting expensive things. It was never about proving anything to the world. It was about creating choices. The choice to spend time with the people you love. The choice to work because you're inspired, not because you're trapped. The choice to say no without fear. The choice to help others without expecting anything in return. That's what financial freedom has been quietly purchasing all along. Not luxury. Freedom. Somewhere tonight, another young person is opening a banking app. They're looking at a balance that feels too small. They're wondering if they'll ever catch up. They're comparing themselves to people who appear miles ahead. If you could speak to them for just 1 minute, you wouldn't promise that becoming wealthy is easy. It isn't. You wouldn't promise that every investment succeeds. They won't. You wouldn't promise that setbacks disappear. They never do. Instead, you'd tell them something far more valuable. Keep going. Learn continuously. Spend intentionally. Invest patiently. Protect your reputation. Build skills that nobody can take away. Focus on progress instead of perfection. Because the distance between an ordinary life and an extraordinary one is rarely crossed by one dramatic moment. It's crossed by thousands of ordinary decisions made when nobody is watching. One disciplined morning, one thoughtful investment, one difficult conversation, one extra hour spent learning. Repeated over months, then years, then decades, until one day, someone looks at your life and calls you lucky. They never saw the countless invisible choices that built it. In the end, every financial story begins with a single decision. The decision to believe that your future can be different from your past. Everything else grows from there. Money compounds, skills compound, knowledge compounds, relationships compound, trust compounds, and the person you become compounds too. So wherever your journey begins, whether your bank account is full or nearly empty, remember this: your balance is only a snapshot. It is not your identity. It is not your potential. It is not your future. Your future is being built by the decisions you make today. Choose them wisely. Stay patient. Keep learning. And let time do what it has always done best. Reward those who refuse to give up. Because true wealth isn't measured by the number in your account. It's measured by the freedom you create, the lives you improve, and the legacy you leave behind. And that is a return that no market can ever take away.